Good morning, my name is Coco, and first and foremost, I want to give this trigger warning because I will be talking about what I am calling Isudice, and I'm calling it Isudice and Isudical instead of the S word because I understand that that word is a trigger for some people, but please let me know if this word is a trigger too so that I can come up with something else. I want to apologize for putting the word in the title, but seeing as this is my first video, I wanted to make it a bit easier to find. First, I'm making this video for two reasons. The first is to help people who are having Isudical thoughts to feel less alone and more understood. And the second is to try to make sure folks with Isudical people in their lives help more than they hurt so that they do less harm than good. Well, I have thought very carefully about this topic myself. This is pretty much based on my own opinions and my own life experience, so keep that in mind in case something I say doesn't really apply as much, I suppose. I will be saying some potentially controversial things, and I do welcome discussion, but I want you all to be ready for any sort of potentially triggering topics. So to help achieve this, I'll list everything I talk about and give timestamps for each of them in the beginning of end of each, or for the beginning and end of each subject, and I'll give that at the beginning of the video before I get started. One last thing before we start, I want to ask you to like the video if you end up getting something out of it, subscribe if you want more videos, or comment if you want to keep the discussion going. Again, I'll be speaking from my personal experiences, so I might do more harm than I intend. So if this video has problems, the dislike button is there, so you can use it. But please tell me what I could do better by leaving a comment. And I guess I just want to, before we move on, tell you that I'm kind of nervous doing this, seeing as this is the first video, so I'll be reading back and forth between a script. Kind of looks unprofessional, but hopefully it'll be okay. So my first topic is preventing Isudice versus supporting mental health. So there's a problem that I think I've identified that occurs when we treat Isudical thoughts or actions as a problem itself rather than a symptom of a different problem. I understand why someone would think this. If we think of mental health as something like a cold, with Isudical thoughts being a symptom similar to coughing, it makes sense only to address the symptom of Isudical thoughts and wait for mental illness struggles to end naturally. After all, colds tend to go away on their own, and we only treat cold symptoms, not the cold itself. So we just wait till people stop coughing and then we go, oh, okay, guess the problem's over. So this is understandable, but mental illness doesn't just go away. A better comparison to mental illness that I think demonstrates better what I'm talking about when I am talking about treating a symptom instead of the cause that I've experienced is something that I've had with a relationship, or with the relationship with my mom. Now, I don't have any eating disorder, but at one point I felt rather self-conscious about my weight and I wanted to stay below 120 pounds or 54.431 kilograms. Sometimes still do, but it's not extreme now, and it wasn't really then. But the response to these concerns about my weight that my mom had was to remove the scale that I used to weigh myself out of the bathroom that I used. So again, I don't have an eating disorder, but I imagine that if I did, this could have made the situation worse in some ways. With my being unable to keep track of my weight, I might, in order to feel more safe about the control that I had over it, I might sort of eat even less in order to make sure that I'm still consuming the right amount of foods, or I might resort to some more extreme methods of controlling my food intake, or maybe our relationship could have just deteriorated such that we just talk less and I feel less inclined to trust her with some personal feelings like that. I think there are very similar problems when we are trying to prevent Isudical thoughts and actions in people, especially the last bit about a relationship deteriorating. When we ignore the true cause of someone's potentially dangerous or damaging actions, we may make them feel like there is no true cause, that they're quote-unquote crazy, either for thinking that they have a problem or the way that they try to go about addressing their problem. If we refuse to acknowledge or address the struggles that people have, we may push them further away from us. If we intend to keep going with helping them, then going about it this way could make things worse. If you have ever had thoughts about ending your life, then the struggles that led to those thoughts are valid and deserve respect. My second topic is Isudice for attention. And when I say attention, I want to put it in heavy quotes. I feel sort of bad for bringing this topic up because I think the idea of people considering Isudice for attention has been used to ignore and discredit the experiences of people who have had thoughts of ending their lives. But I've had some experience and thoughts related to this, so I'd like to share them in case others may have had similar thoughts or experiences. So one reason that I have thought about ending my life is the fact that sometimes I think certain people won't take my struggles seriously unless they thought that I was willing to die to avoid them. It happens to be the case that for me personally, I also thought that sometimes my life would have been better off not continuing, regardless of what other people thought. But regardless, I did have some other thoughts relating to my personal Isudice. One thing that I have thought of is the fact that it seemed like since people weren't taking my struggles seriously, that maybe they just wouldn't take them seriously unless I wasn't alive. If I wasn't alive, then they would have had to confront the fact that I wasn't acting, wasn't faking, and at least with regards to the way that I was feeling, wasn't overreacting because I must have truly felt bad if it led me to taking my own life. The irony in this, however, is that sometimes I didn't want to have to go through with it. I wanted them to know that I seriously was considering taking my own life and having them help me instead of having to actually take my own life for them to start to pay attention to it. So I wanted them to know that I was struggling to the point that I might want to take my own life in order for that to sort of be what led them to help me overcome my struggles. So I did think that this was a better alternative than having to pass away for all my struggles to end. But in this way, this is sort of bringing attention to my struggles. So that's sort of a way that I mean Isudice for attention, I suppose. One of the reasons I bring this up is because for me, there's a correlation between the idea of me wanting to end my life for attention, as we've said, and the idea of me truly just wanting my life to be over regardless of what people think. The way it is for me is that the thoughts that I have about my death being the only way people pay attention to my struggles is quite similar to the fact that maybe I think my death is the only way to escape those struggles completely. So because of this, I'd argue that considering an Isudice for attention, again, attention is not only something that we should sort of ignore, but it's something that I think is rational. Not to necessarily say that it's correct or the right way to go or anything, but I think it's absolutely understandable. So basically, like, the rationality goes like this. The people in my life aren't acknowledging my struggles, and I need them to do that for me to get better. My attempts to get them to acknowledge my struggles aren't working because they think my attempts to seek help are just me trying to get attention. So this means that the only assured way to show them that I would be needing help is to do something that couldn't possibly be for attention. An action that I could take that would satisfy this would be ending my life, because once it was over, it would be evident that I wasn't going to get any more attention. However, since the point of this is to get help for my struggles instead of trying to just avoid them entirely forever, I probably want the people in my life to understand that I'm willing to, perhaps plan to, take my own life. This is basically what leads to the reasoning of an Isudice for attention. The main reason why I bring this up is because I want to reduce stigma related to people who have thought that the end of their life would be the only thing that could make the people in their lives care about them. I don't want anyone to feel that their Isudical ideation is any less valid because of they thought of doing it for attention in this way that we've talked about. Just because that thought has passed in their head, I don't want them to feel any worse about it. If you are wondering if an Isudice is the only way to have people acknowledge your struggles, you're in a tough spot. I don't want it to become tougher by you feeling bad about the fact that you're in that tough spot. Another problem here is I think that getting attention, another problem here is that if I think that getting attention from these people in my life is the only way to solve my problems, then if that possibility is taken off the table, and by that I mean, like, if I find out that these people truly don't really care, if I have these sort of Isudical thoughts, then the only option that I might feel like I have left is to truly go through and perform a suicide. I'm so sorry. Perform an Isudice, I guess. This is one major reason that I think Isudices for attention should be taken much more seriously, because it could escalate to more serious Isudical intent. Anytime the idea of Isudice is brought up, it should be taken seriously, whether a person intends to go through with it or not. There's three possibilities here. They're either genuinely struggling to a point that they're considering taking their life to be the only way to sort of get away from the things that are causing them pain. They think that the end of their life would be the only way to make people truly understand sort of the way that they're suffering, or they have some sort of kind of unusual mindset, which leads them to kind of try to manipulate people using this sort of serious, I guess we'll call it a threat in this situation. But no matter what, all of these situations should be taken very seriously, I think. Now on to the last topic. This here is going to be the rationality of mentally ill or Isudical people. So to get things started, this might be a bit off topic, but you know something I don't like? It's whenever people in like movies or TV have a character do something just because they think that they know what's best for another character. It usually only creates a lot of problems that could be fixed if people just talked with each other, you know? Like instead of saying, hey, I know what's best for you, why don't you just tell me why you think that you want me to do this? I think a similar problem happens when we try to help people who struggle with Isudice and mental illness. We try to force them to do things because we know what's best for them, but since we don't have real conversations with them, all we really do is make them feel like their feelings, desires, and sort of the actions that they plan to take are just invalid. I think it's easy for a person in this situation to just feel like they're being told that they're the problem instead of the actual problem being the problem. So a sort of example that I see with this that can potentially cause some harm is that I think we sometimes might not help self-harmers all the way in the best way that we can. So for example, if we tell a self-harmer that self-harm just doesn't solve anything and then take away their access to hurt themselves, then we haven't really solved an underlying issue. They're still struggling with whatever sort of emotional pain led them to self-harm. If we don't really validate their feelings, in my personal opinion, in this situation, all we're asking them to do is just self-harm in secret and not tell us about it anymore. We basically, in this situation, told them that we're not interested in helping them through their struggles. We're just interested in telling them that the way they've gone about trying to deal with their struggles is wrong. Or maybe even worse, we've told them that they're not struggling at all, which is kind of a gaslighting situation, which I am not a fan of. But similarly, I think we need to try to better understand and validate Isudical people whenever they express their thoughts. I don't really think that I've ever seen anyone suggest that it's understandable that someone would end their life. Granted, I haven't been in every counseling session of every person ever. I haven't been in many of them either. I've only been in my own. But it feels like when people bring up the fact that they want to perform an Isudice, especially with just like their friends or anything like that, the idea that, oh, okay, I'm not telling you to do it, but I understand, isn't really brought up that much. I feel like I understand why people don't really react this way, but I could understand why someone in that position would, or someone in that position, as in the person who was having the Isudical thoughts, would feel looked down upon just because they don't want to live. I don't think this is really good. If this is our goal, or if our goal is to keep people alive, then we should try our best not to make Isudical people feel irrational. That'll just make them want to hide what they feel even more, which will just put more pressure on them, which might ultimately culminate in them fully deciding to end their life. Sorry. But continuing with how I started this section, it's true that mentally ill people are sometimes inclined to do things that aren't always in their best interest. However, I think this fact is sometimes used to invalidate the desires and feelings of mentally ill people. So let's say there's a depressed person who feels potentially worthless and wants to end their life. Instead of asking why they feel that way, often we might say something like, oh, that's only the depression talking, or something like that, in order to get them to try to just go, oh, okay, I guess I just will ignore that thought or something like that. But for me, the way it sounds to me is that all we're doing here is telling someone that they're wrong, which isn't really that helpful. If we're trying to help someone in a situation, we need to better understand where their mind is coming from. If I'm trying to help someone with some sort of math problem, then and they don't really understand it, I should try to figure out why they reached a certain incorrect answer so that I can help them do better. Skipping this can sort of make them feel like I'm saying, oh, okay, well, you got that question wrong because you're bad at math, so how about instead of following what your brain thinks, you just do what I say? Now, a struggling math student might not always think this way, but when we're trying to help someone who's suffering from mental illness, we should be extra careful not to make them feel bad for the way they go about dealing with their struggles, especially since attempting to deal with those struggles is already such a big accomplishment for mentally ill people. Dealing with mental illness is a personal battle, so we need to give people the tools to fight for themselves. We need to focus more on teaching people healthy solutions rather than telling them that their solutions that they've gone to are unhealthy. And to be a good teacher, we need to understand that our students have valid reason for doing the things that they're doing. I understand that sort of doing this can be quite scary because we don't want to tell people that the reasons that they are considering taking their own life are legitimate, but the fact is they are legitimate. People don't consider ending their lives just on a whim. This is something that people take very seriously and often only decide on after a long time. But if we believe that the people in our lives have good reasons why they should reconsider taking their own lives, then we should be brave enough to face the reasons why they might want to go through with it. If we aren't, then maybe we should try to redirect them to someone who is, instead of trying to have a conversation with them that might do more harm potentially. To make sure we're not making Isudical people feel crazy, we have to understand that their reasons for wanting to end their life are at least understandable. If we think that there are good reasons for someone to stay alive, we should talk and work together with them to identify those reasons instead of essentially insulting them for not seeing those reasons themselves. So I guess we've finally made it to the end. I've tried recording this video a bunch of times and didn't go as great as I'd hoped, but I want to thank you so much for listening, and I hope you've got something out of my little talk. If you think someone else might get something out of it, please share this video with them. My purpose with this channel is to sort of fight against stigma and ignorance, and one of the most important ways that I like to do this is by validating the feelings of people who feel alone or maybe don't feel understood. So with this in mind, I kind of want to put a little lighthearted joke type thing at the end of the video by sharing a sort of silly experience that I have in hopes that maybe some people relate to it. Today I guess I'll share that when I finish eating a bag of microwave popcorn, sometimes I'll open the bag and lick on the inside to taste the salt and buttery artery cloggingness of the bag, and I think this is kind of gross, but I like to think that I'm not the only one to do it. But again, thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you later. So peace out.